Hey everybody, I hope you're having a great day. It's Saturday and I had a couple questions that I wanted to address, so you'll see a couple videos coming out today regarding the questions. Somebody asked how you measure for Russell Klein if you don't have any teeth. The measurements that they're talking about are the measurements for the trays that go in your mouth when you do the impression kit at home. You need to measure your mouth through Russell. He sends some really great instructions of how to do it and where the measurements need to be. But if you don't have any teeth, it's kind of hard to figure out where you should measure. So when I did my measurements, I used a piece of graph paper that was cut into small strips, kind of about this size, and I made a little mark on one end as a starting point. I had a lot of teeth that were broken, and so they had crumbled and were broken off, and it was hard to figure out exactly where to measure. So I'm going to take my bottom denture out and show you my gums and what's a good starting point. Basically, he needs them where the incisors are, right here, and right here, and right here. So I'm going to show you with my bottom denture out. It's going to be the same thing for the front or for the top. If you ever wanted to use a piece of dental floss, you can do that too. Just like this, you can tie a little knot in the end of it as a starting point, and then just have a mark it with your fingernail or pen or whatever, and then you can use that to measure on a ruler, and then you'd have your measurement. So I made a little knot in there. You can kind of see it. And I'll show you. So it's way easier for me to talk with my dentures out of the bottom. So here they are. If you don't have any teeth, you go right to the corner. So right to the corner. And I know it looks funky, but basically, right here, those are my little incisor bumps, right there. So right there, you want to measure. So I would take my little piece of dental floss right here, right there, to right there. So right there. That's what I would need to measure from the knot over to my fingernail. Just lay your ruler out or your measuring tape or whatever, measure it. Now with the back, you want to do the same thing. Take your little knot. I didn't put adhesive in my top because I need to do a video after this. So they're going to kind of fall out maybe. It's the same thing for the back. You want to go kind of halfway in between the corner into the molar, where your molars should be in the back. So kind of right in the center where like your premolars would be. So this is my incisor right here. Go right there. About halfway back from where your incisor might be, right in the corner, to the back, right in the middle. What these are is they measure across to send you the right size tray for the impression. And even at your dentist office, they have to do these measurements to find the right tray that fits you the best. So it's all based on that. If you have dentures, you can measure your dentures. Just measure them across. So you would take your knot and put it right where your incisor is and all the way across to the other one, and that would also give you a really good measurement. So you can measure your dentures or your partial or whatever, but the best thing to do is just to take your dental floss right across, right there. That's my measurement. And I always do it twice. I do it 2 times just to make sure that it's correct. If you have dentures already and you need to measure for Russell, you can do both. Measure your dentures and measure your gums. Just make sure that you measure 2 times. Make sure you get the same measurement. I think it was Margaret. I want to say it was Margaret. that made gave the idea to use a piece of bread, a white bread, stick it right in your mouth. You can take the crust off or whatever, but it's just a white piece of bread. Bite down on it, pull it out. There's your mold to measure with. So that's a pretty cool trick, a really great idea. I didn't come up with it, don't give me credit for it. But I do like to pass on that really cool information. So using a piece of bread, stick it in your mouth, bite down, and then pull it out, and then you have a perfect impression of your mouth, and you can measure it across that way. I used graph paper cut into strips. That worked really well for me because I had a starting point. You know, depends on what you have. Sewing, measure tape, I've used dental floss, people use thread. The bread works really, really great. You know, you can use anything that you're comfortable with that you can just, you know, get a good gauge measurement of. You know, if you're gonna do the tops, right here, okay, and then in the back, same thing. Mine were about 1.5 inches. It was like 1.5 inches and then 1 3/4 inches towards the back. So my trays were pretty much perfect, right on the money. One of them was a little bit tight. I think it was my top that was a little bit tight, but that was just because of the way my gums were shaped. It wasn't because of the wrong tray size. It was just because of the way my gums were shaped. So definitely just go by the corners. If you don't have your teeth, it's totally okay. Just go by. He needs to know what size your gums are. So if you don't have any teeth, no dentures, no partials, no nothing, and you're totally toothless right now, see how it's a horseshoe shape? You want to go right at where it starts to turn. Right here. So right along where your front teeth would be, and then just right over next. Right there. So right where like the corner point is, where it would start to turn to make the horseshoe. There. And then 2 spaces back from there. Okay. Right there. Across. Just so he knows what size tray. It's not a super big deal. It's totally okay. It's like the easiest thing to do. And I know people are like, how do you measure? Well, that's how you measure. Dental floss is really great. If you want to use something like this, which is a cuticle tool, you can get them and they're wooden, and you can just, you know, have somebody help you, open up your mouth, have them hold the stick in there like that, and mark it. Same thing with the back. And mark it. And you can do the same thing with the front. Right here. Mark it. That's really hard for me to do by myself with a stick. Huh? Right there, and mark it. So it's not that difficult. It seems overwhelming. I totally get that part of it. I was super overwhelmed at first. I didn't know what to do. I had to ask Russell a million questions of, you know, what are you talking about? How do I do this? How do I measure my gums for trays? You know, we're not home dentists. We're dental techs. So it is a little bit different, but once you get the hang of it, it's really, really simple. But having somebody help you is really helpful. But if you're like me and you didn't want anybody seeing the inside of your mouth, and you weren't comfortable having even your significant other, you know, wife, husband, whatever, help you, I didn't get any help with mine. One, there was nobody around. Two, even if there was, I just didn't feel comfortable having anybody look inside my mouth in the condition that it was in. So you can also ask your dentist. If you're going to the dentist for extractions, or you're seeing a dentist or whatever, you can ask him what size trays you use. You can ask him to measure your gum width. But if you want to do it at home, quick and easy, just use a stick, use a piece of bread, use dental floss, use thread, use graph paper, whatever you can get in there to just measure. If you've got a thin enough tape measure, they do come in little tiny ones. If you've got a thin enough one, just stick it in there like that. Just measure right across where your points are, even if you don't have any teeth, this right where the corner is, and then 2 spaces back. And there you go. It's pretty straightforward, and I know it seems super complicated, but it's really not that bad. So there you go. Thanks for asking that question about Russell Klein and measurements. Somebody also asked another question about gagging. It seems to be that Russell Klein doesn't make his palette in his dentures as far back as some dentists do. So this part right here, a lot of dentists make it a lot longer, like that. And so a lot of time that area right there will make people gag. It'll hit back there. And so Russell doesn't make them as long as some of the other dentists do. Sorry, it's so hard for me to talk without my teeth. Russell doesn't make his palate as long as a lot of the other dentists do. So I've heard from a lot of people, I never had issues with gagging, but a lot of people do, and it seems to be that Russell's dentures actually help curb that issue. So they don't actually hit the reflex back there and cause you to gag. So that's another plus side of it that I didn't really know, because I haven't had issues with gagging, but I have heard that his palates are a little shorter. Still great with suction, still awesome on that front. It just doesn't quite hit that gag reflex back there. So anyway, Russell measurements. Thanks for asking, you guys.